Presented by the Making Star Wars Podcasting Network. This is the Cantina Cast, your watering hole for thought-provoking Star Wars discussion, character dissections, quote and scene analysis, honest opinions on the Star Wars news that interests you, and whatever else these guys come up with. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joao.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 212, our second review show of The Last Jedi. And, Joe, I got to say, I do feel a little bit bad because I didn't mention spoilers. Like, you should turn off this if you haven't seen the movie on our last episode. So I apologize if I ruined it for anyone. I don't think I did. But anyway, the interesting thing with this second review show, Joa, is when last night after we recorded and I was editing the show, I was watching things that were going on in Discord and I was chatting with a few people and stuff. And I was getting to the point where I'm like, maybe it wasn't as okay as I thought. And I was getting those jitters again about it, like I had going into the movie where I was like, this isn't good. Then I saw the movie. I thought, all right, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And now, after we saw the movie, we talked about it on the show. And then, I decompressed a little bit. I edited the show and I'm thinking about it in my head as I'm editing. I'm like, maybe it wasn't as good as I think it was. Maybe it really was that bad. So this morning, again, I had the things were creeping in my head. And I wonder if this is like everybody's feeling this way. And we'll get into how you feel in a second. But then I went and saw the movie again today. And I felt better about it. I mean, I still have problems with it, but overall, my second viewing was better. And the Yoda scene didn't seem so weird to me this time around. It's weird. Like I noticed different things. Like I could concentrate a little bit more. There wasn't as many people in the theater early in the morning, so that I had that going for me. So it wasn't too bad. But what was your experience the second time around? Was it as me as well? Like you had those jitters, and then it was fine, and now you're like, well, what the hell? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. We come on last night. If you listen to that show, it's pretty apparent if you start piecing things together the way we jump around from different topics. It's like we didn't know. It was like we were having a hard time coming up with like what is our overall feeling here about this movie. Like it was, you didn't want to say anything because it's like, man, I don't want to it's like you don't want to put yourself out there that early, it's like, I just want to wait. I don't want to jump the gun and say, give some overarching, this is my opinion on the entire movie and, this is where I rank it. Like, I just don't like doing that. And so I was having a hard time with it. Then you see what people are saying on YouTube and Discord, like when we're podcasting, and I go back and I look at the chat channel and everything. And then I'm talking to people in our Discord today, and I'm like, I just really didn't know what to think because that was just confusing me even more. So I think I was kind of feeling the same way going into the movie today. I was like, I don't know. Was it good? Like I couldn't contemplate that. So we saw it and we both walked out. And here's the thing. Ashley, she said she woke up this morning and said, I didn't really like the movie. And I was like, I didn't say anything. Like I just she was actually talking about it a lot this morning on the way there after the movie. She's bringing up topics to me. Like, I mean, it's not just me talking about it.
Which is interesting.
She's coming up with ideas and stuff like, she's like this and that. And she's like breaking it down, and it's cool to have that conversation. But then we both walked out and she finally said, she was like, I liked it a lot better that time. She's like, I actually like it. And then, so like she went from like really not feeling it last night and then completely changed her mind, 12 hours later. So I felt a lot better. We both kind of said it at the same time. Like it was like, yeah, I really liked it a lot better the second time. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just a Disney fanboy. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting how polarizing it is now. Like the prequel stuff back in the day seems, nothing compared to what's going on now. Like it seems like this is really.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah. It was always, the prequels does have some of that stuff where it's like, the midichlorians and like that's the big one. Like, the Jar Jar, the Jar Jar and the acting or whatever, that doesn't have anything to do. People aren't complaining about porgs. They're not complaining about the Voltexes. You know, they're not complaining about, I mean, there's a little bit of complaint. Yeah, they're not complaining about the acting. There's a little bit of complaint about some of the comedy moments. So, I mean, that's with everyone. They think that, I mean, everybody thinks that there's never been a joke in Star Wars before.
Well, you know what's funny about the comedy? Like last night, I thought it was campy and maybe a little bit over the top. Today, I didn't think so, which is funny because I thought that with The Force Awakens, it got more annoying as we watched it more. And like this seems to be reversed. Like it doesn't bother me as much. I guess. I don't know. It's weird, but continue as you were saying there with the polarizing topic here. I mean, well,
yeah, I mean, it's always been, it's mostly been with the prequels. It was more from they're just poorly made movies. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's kind of the general complaint is that mostly, I mean, yeah, people do bring up midichlorians. I'm not going to like hide that. I mean, I'm not going to, I mean, I want it to be kind of a fair comparison here when I say this, but I feel like this is not getting the complaints for the same reasons the prequels did, I guess is what I'm saying. I think there's a pretty wide difference with what I'm hearing a lot of. And so and now I think it's all story issues. Nobody's saying, hey, you know, Adam Driver sucked, you know, like, I mean, everybody's like saying the acting, Mark was great. They all did a great job acting. So it's not like the movie was made poorly. I mean, the people who are complaining about it's all story. It's not about the other stuff. So it's different than the prequels. So I don't know if it's more or less polarizing at this point. Probably it's so new. Who can say? It's
new. So it's going to be more at the moment.
At the moment, yes.
You know, yeah. But you know, the prequels after 10 years or so or more, that argument of they suck is kind of tapered down a little bit. So maybe in 10 years, this won't be as bad as everyone's making it out to be.
Well, like I say, it only took 12 hours for me or so. So I mean, yeah, I think
that's true.
I think that, you know, you have to, I think that second viewing, it was essential. Like it really, I had more emotions in this time around. Like I got the goosebumps and tingles, a few times in this movie. You know, I got, you know, kind of feeling like, oh man, I might lose it here. I
had that last night, but I had a little bit more today. Like it hit me with Luke and Leia when Luke passes on. That hit me. You know, there was moments where I get choked up. And even, you know, it's funny, you know, Broom Boy, we pick on that. And that ending is kind of, for Star Wars, is a little out of place based on all the other movies that came before. But for me, it was a symbol. And we've mentioned it in Discord. I can't remember who mentioned it as well. Is like, you know, they said, all right, my Star Wars is kind of not dead, but it's changed. And now it's on to a new generation, like my daughter type of thing. And I've been saying that for a few years on the show. This isn't our Star Wars. It's for the next generation and stuff like that. And that's basically what that symbolism was at the end to me. And I cried a little bit and you know, got teary-eyed. And I'm like, wow, this is Morgan's saga now. Like, this is her trilogy. And it's interesting where they're going to go with it and stuff like that. And I agree with you. The second viewing is very important, I think, just because there's a lot going on there. There's things that, and I want to touch on in a minute with Luke, because my problem is right now is Luke and reconciling the good things with the things I'm not so sure about with his character. Like him about to kill Ben conflicts with him believing in his father and saying, I can't kill my own father. It's like he couldn't kill his own family, and he wasn't going to. He flirted with the idea because we need more backstory. And I even said in the Discord today, I said, you know what we really need? We need the novel, because I think the novel is going to fill in those gaps that we really wanted, Joa, like that, like you mentioned with Han, him finding out about Han, and it cuts to the next scene. We don't get to see what Luke's feeling there or thinking. You know what I mean? So I think for once the book's going to actually matter, which they haven't in a long time for me. At least for me. I know others like the books and they think everything matters, but to me, it never got that punch. And now with the things that we want filled in between, like that Ryan couldn't really explore as much and he had to get on to other things. So I think the book will be key in all those things. But with Luke, I like that he has regrets and he's feeling guilty and all these things, because those are things I feel. So I still relate to Luke. It's just some reconciling those little things that and then the whole thing that where he passes on in this movie, it was beautiful how it happened. But in my mind, it was one movie too soon, I guess. And I got to reconcile that myself. Like, I got to realize I need to just get over it. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm speaking for a lot of Star Wars fans where we just got to, it's not even headcanon with me, Joe. It's more like the choices of how they went about things, I guess. And some of the lore, maybe I kind of question a little bit, but continue. take the floor here, sir.
As far as going back to your earlier point with the broom boy there, I kind of got this idea. It's like, who are like Rey, maybe it's just this perpetual, I'm not going to I can't find them, I looked for them and I'm not going to find it. It's like kind of like, I don't know, reminds me. And then you see these orphans, or whatever they are, but they just reminds me of like kind of like Peter Pan and the Lost Boys or something. And is that kind of, instead of kidnapping kids, like maybe the Jedi just take in like.
Well, the First Order does that as well.
Well,
like they take.
No,
yeah.
But I'm saying now it'll just be like these kids who don't have a place to go. Like it'll be like the opposite. Like we're not taking, because
Rey's orphanage where she takes the Force users.
Yeah,
and they kinda,
like it's a Force orphanage or something. I don't know. Maybe that's a dumb idea.
Professor X's
maybe they
Force.
won't be that literal with it, but I just think that it's. I don't know. I just felt something with that, and maybe that's just really all there is to it. Although the mirror scene, and I was talking in Discord about it, was that the mirror of Erised and the Harry Potter.
Yeah,
books,
I thought of that too.
Like he wants to see his parents in the mirror, and he does because that's what that mirror does. So this dark side mirror thing, it just kind of reminded me of the idea of that, and also because the two characters were wanting the same thing out of this reflective, thing. And so it just reminded me of that. And, but still I don't know. I mean, JJ could do something where she's still some kind of cosmic being or something. I don't know.
There's
I don't know
a conflict there because there's a conflict. Like Luke even says to her, nobody's from nowhere. You know what I mean? And then they joke with the Jakku thing. And he's like, well, that's pretty out of the thing. And, I see a lot of evidence still and I don't want to get into that whole debate again, but as I was watching it the second time, there's that argument that she's still got a shot at being Luke's in a way. And that mirror thing made me think of there's a trick going on there. And I'm thinking, because Luke seems to get in touch with the Force at that moment. And I'm wondering if Luke is blocking the truth from her. And that's why we don't see anything. I mean, JJ could do something like that or anything like crazy like that. I don't know. In a way, it's almost like if they do that, if they retcon this, I don't even know if I want it because it might cheapen the whole thing and be like, well, what do we got going on here? Now we don't have that father-daughter kind of bonding thing. I mean, yeah, they did technically on Ash 2 there and all that. But you know what I mean? Like he's just going to be Force Ghost dad that comes in and talks to her every now and then. I don't know if that's going to really work all that well. You know what I mean? So, but I'm just like the way that like they did the first thing where Kylo kind of mentions it. I don't think they needed to bring it up again. Like I just think I felt like why are we going rehashing this again? Like I don't know. Like I guess they just really put the final nail in the coffin on that. I guess that's why they did it again. And the whole mirror thing with it, nobody comes up and all that other stuff. Maybe she's the first Jedi reincarnated or something like that. Who the hell knows? Because she says she knows this place and blah, 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 and that whole thing. But the thing I wanted to get to you, Joe, and mention is one of the best scenes, and we didn't really touch on it too much last night when we got our initial reaction, is where Luke is telling her about the Jedi and their pride and Darth Sidious and all that. And he mentions Obi-Wan, but not by name. And he almost blames Obi-Wan for Anakin's fall here. You know what I mean? Like he throws Obi-Wan under the bus in a way, in my mind. I don't know. Do you catch on that, or am I?
Yeah, he didn't say. He said Darth Sidious's name, but he didn't say Obi-Wan. But
he said his apprentice, his master, let him fall. Like he didn't. So I'm getting. This is going to be an interesting moment, and I hope Dave and company do this animated thing as soon as possible, where we have all these moments with Luke maybe talking to Force Ghost. Kenobi there, and he's like, nah, you're the blame for Anakin, and look at what my whole family is like this because of you and all this, and then is maybe closed off. It's interesting that Yoda comes to him and not like even, well, obviously there's reasons why and all that other stuff, but it's maybe Obi-Wan's like, all right, we're done, kind of fade away and that's it. Whereas Yoda's kind of always with him and whatnot and stuff like that. But I don't know. What did you think of that scene at all? I mean, I really loved that moment. I wish we had more of that. And you know what I mean? Like that where he's talking about things. And, I thought of Adam. I thought of you, and we have our dissections and our psychology stuff where we're talking about when we throw the Jedi under the bus and that. And Luke is kind of saying the things that we've all said. A lot of Star Wars fans have said with the Jedi in the prequel trilogy. This was almost like a homage to that in a way. Like, And at the height of the thing, they were pride, and I love when Luke said, and it made me think of you because of our conversations over the last 4 or 5 years, where he's saying that's the pride. That power doesn't belong to the Jedi. It's folly to believe that. I thought that was amazing. I thought that was great. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's a lot of the stuff we've talked about, and like I would say is it's just more interpretation by us, but you have, Luke Skywalker kind of like now really repeating kind of those kind of sentiments that like some, in the fan base might have when you really kind of deep dive and try to look at the movies and the storylines a little bit further than just from a casual entertainment aspect. So it really, I mean, those kind of touched home, I guess you could say, because it's definitely stuff that we're interested in. And I know they're just little nuggets, and it's like, I mean, when he said Darth Sidious, there's probably some people that they're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, who was that one again? So, I mean, I mean, obviously we're just into it. So, but I get so excited just like with a little nugget like that. And it's fun to think about, like just those, little moments that, it's not about, reveals or anything. It's just, kind of like, this is what happened. And, I don't know. I like that kind of exposition.
Well, and then the way he was telling her to reach out with the Force was probably, I think, my favorite comedy moment.
Yeah, I laughed at that. Like, I laughed at that the whole way through this time. Last night, like, I was just like
you're trying to pick up on everything.
I wouldn't, like, I wasn't emotional. I wasn't laughing very much at any of it. Like, I was just kind of very
too tense,
I guess. And like this morning I was laughing at, I really liked that part. It was just, they were just both being full on silly at that point, and it just kind of went on for a second, and then like it ended. Like, so it was just kind of, it wasn't like a gag. It wasn't a porg kind of flying at the windshield or a rock bowling over a wheelbarrow. It was very human. It was like both of them just kind of having a moment there. It was just two actors kind of bringing the characters to life, I guess.
Well, it was very much Empire Strikes Back, Yoda, Luke kind of thing at the beginning, in a sense. Like, I liked that whole thing. I thought that was pretty cool that, and he's got the little thing. I don't know if it was like a palm or something, or it was like a stick. I'm not sure what he was doing because it seemed flimsy at one point, but then I don't know if he smacks her hand with his hand or if it's that. I can't remember. I'll have to watch it again on my third showing and stuff like that. But that, I really wish we'd got a little bit more of Luke talking about that. It's interesting that, he was going on. I wish we had more of that. But any other things that jumped out at you your second time that you wanted to get into?
Just another little like nugget of a line. And like, again, it's like we always peel these layers back. And now just with the way some of the stuff was treated in this movie, it's like I almost hesitate. It's like, well, should I even ask this question? It seems so minuscule, like, and they don't even answer the big questions. So, it's like, do I really want to put more stuff in my head? But, it was, when Kylo, he told Rey, he said, I think it was at the very first time they connected, and he said, you couldn't have created, she couldn't have created the Force connection because the attempt would have killed her. And I just found that to be interesting. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what there's maybe to say on that or a theory behind that, but like, why?
Well, I was wondering that myself because when he says that in the second viewing, I'm like, well, Luke exerted himself and died. Of course, he was willing to die. He wanted to die, so to speak. And I'm wondering if this was Snoke, because Snoke didn't want to die, and Snoke manipulated that whole situation with them. So obviously, Snoke is doing some kind of mind control, crazy stuff that we don't even know about. And sadly, he died, so we'll never know what he was really doing and stuff. And although that's not his true form, so says the visual dictionary. So I don't know how that's all going to go. And I started thinking crazy stuff in my head when Snoke was on screen and talking. And I'm like, is this maybe Palpatine, Project Resurrection, all these things? I'm like, nah, they wouldn't go there. I mean, it's just not, it can't be that. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think Kylo was manipulated in that scene. Like, I think this is where he starts to figure things out more. And it's more like the truth-telling Sith and lying Jedi, where kind of, this is where you kind of believe, like, Kylo, yeah, her parents are nobodies, and he's actually telling the truth, because that's what the bad guys usually do in Star Wars. They actually reveal the whole truth there. And I think he figures out that Snoke is the one manipulating the situation, and he kind of slowly pieces it together. And that's why I think even when we're in the throne room with Rey and Kylo there, he's figured it out, and he's already got a plan together, obviously. And he's in the elevator. He's already got things figured out in his head, at least most of it in his way. And he's going to just take out Snoke and do what he has to do. So that's very interesting. That's the interesting thing with Kylo. He's pretty good at manipulating and deceiving himself now. Like, and obviously he's probably picked up a page or two from Snoke here, which is why I don't really believe him with the parent thing. And then, you see him playing dead when Hux comes in and all that other stuff. So I'm not sure. There was quite a, it's funny because I think Kylo took a lot of growth in this movie, but when he gets into Luke, he goes right back to the Force Awakens Kylo Ren, because obviously Luke rattles his cage and gets them all fired up, and that was the whole point of it all, and why he misjudged everything and why the Resistance got away and everything, which I understand that, but it felt like he just took a step back again, and it was interesting. But I don't know, what else you got to say, sir?
I thought it was also interesting when Snoke called him or mentioned that he might be a new Darth Vader. The phrasing of that sentence was kind of cool, like just kind of the sentiment or the idea of it, or it just really, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, it was more than just a bloodline. It was like, you're going to be, you're the next Darth Vader. Like, I don't know. I like that. It's just, it was a cool line. Yeah, and it's
funny though, that he says, take that ridiculous thing off your face though.
He's talking him up and then he tears him down. He's kind of, it's kind of the way the conversation goes, but he does mention that. So I just thought that prospect was on the table at one point is what I'm saying. So it's just kind of a cool idea. I don't really know if it would just be, it's just talk sentiment. I mean, obviously I don't think they're going to, put him in a suit or something, but anyway, like you say, I don't think that was ever the idea, but we'll see. I mean, Rey's probably still got a butt whooping to hand to him at some point, I guess, in episode 9. So.
Well, episode 9 is going to be interesting how they handle that. And I think there's going to be a time jump. Like, I think there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 years into the future. Not a lot, I hope. But I think they will jump because you got to see Kylo. It's interesting. And I was even thinking of this. All right. So the Resistance is like 5 people now. The First Order's got a good chunk of its things still around. But now they got this leader that obviously Hux is obviously trying to figure out. I got that impression with Hux, like, when he was giving the orders at the end there, like Hux is trying to figure out, like when Kylo goes off into the room and finds the dice, like Hux was kind of looking at him like, how do I fix this situation where I'm the one in charge? Because he's going the wrong way in a sense. So I get the impression that there's still going to be that rivalry. Hux got put in his place, but I'm interested where they're going to go with Hux, because I thought his character, we got more of him. I'll say that. And it was maybe a little bit more than what we got in The Force Awakens. There's more dimension. And it was interesting that he got punked by Poe, of course. And Poe, I think Poe actually grew the most when I think about it. When I watched it today, I think Poe kind of grew the most out of everybody in this movie, I think. I don't know. Do you see that or no?
I would say, well, yeah, as far as just like a character arc and actually going through an arc from like one point to another and learning something, I think that argument can definitely be made. I think that it's hard to say because I think Kylo had the biggest, like the most, like, maybe not, I'm not saying he's like change. I think but we saw so much about like kind of and found out a lot more about at least him, I felt anyway. We found out about the temple at least and his version of it and what he thinks about it. And just, I mean, we definitely got a lot of introspection and what he thinks of and maybe what he thinks of himself and things like that. So I felt like we got a lot of information on, Ben Solo and all that. But I think Poe probably had the biggest, you could make the argument. I'll say you can make the argument. I don't know. It just depends on how you want to quantify a character arc, because I think that because Poe really was one place and ended up in another, and Kylo's, he's got more power now, but I mean, has he changed or learned anything? I think he's just going to get worse. The more power, he's just going to get worse and make dumber decisions and get mad and just keep getting pissed off, I guess.
Well, I'm curious if he learns from that, you know what I mean? Because when he's kneeling down and he picks up the dice and everything, he's getting into that inner reflection stuff, and I can see him learning, like, his emotions got the better of him with Luke and everything. So I can see him kind of like, all right, I can't be, if I'm going to lead everybody here, I can't be the impatient leader. I got to be patient. Patience is the key to all of this, and that's what Sidious had, and even Vader to a degree, although he lost it, more so than Sidious and everything else. So, and the other thing with the, I don't know if Kylo, if he's going to be really balanced for the leadership. Hux is going to play for him, as I said.
Well, it's going to be interesting because we've never really seen this kind of thing where the, at least the bad guys, I mean, whatever it is, who's ever leading that, we've never seen because Palpatine was never, he wasn't like a warrior in that sense. Like, you didn't see him as that. He was always the senator and then, the chancellor and stuff. So, but he's like an actual, wearing his lightsaber, he's, armored up or whatever you want to call it. He's dressed to fight, all the time. So it's just kind of it's like a warrior, leading this entire, galaxy conquering thing.
It's like King Arthur.
It's just a different concept because usually it's some guy sitting on a throne, but he's going to be out there fighting somebody. So it's not just like the old crippled emperor or something like that. So I don't know. It's just interesting to see somebody who's in complete control have his prowess as far as, being a warrior and watching that as a movie. It'd be interesting.
Well, the other thing I noticed the second time around is Yoda and Luke. When Luke goes to destroy the tree, he can't do it. And that is why, and now I realize that's why Yoda did what he did.
Yeah, he hesitates, yeah.
Yeah, and then Luke, he learns the lesson of letting go and doing what he's got to do. The interesting thing is I'm wondering if I have to imagine Yoda knows that Rey took the books.
Of course, he's probably been watching the whole thing.
Well, correct, because we get that whole mention in the Clone Wars with the Yoda arc where he says, I can see this, that, and the other, but he doesn't tell what the real truth is to his, Yoda at the time, but he can see all and all that other stuff. Luke obviously doesn't realize that. He will now that he's become one with the Force. He'll see everything all at once and what's going to happen and stuff like that. So I just thought it was, again, the second viewing, you pick up things that you obviously missed. That's the whole point of it. And then this moment here, it's because last night I was conflicted. Weren't they going to destroy the tree anyway? But it turns out Luke was, kind of hesitant to let go of those old Jedi ways. But then at the end, he's like, well, I won't be the last Jedi. There'll be a new, in a sense, which is interesting. For 1 minute, he's like, all right, the Jedi got to end. And then at the end, he kind of, it's a rebirth almost for Luke in the sense where all right, I'm transforming into something higher and I'm going to guide Rey in a different way. And she'll be the last Jedi for now, but there'll be more coming, like Broom Boy and everything else and the people in the stables and stuff like that. I don't know. Any more thoughts on the whole tree and Yoda or anything like that? Did it feel weird to you this time around? Because it didn't for me.
No, and I thought it's just that initial shot of him when you first see him, when they show his face, it looks weird. It looked like a CGI puppet. It looked like it was, I guess it was a puppet, but at first, because I guess maybe, I don't know, it just looked kind of really odd to me. But then later in the scene, it gets he looks a lot better. So it just kind of threw me at first because it didn't look, I don't know. My first impression was it didn't look that good. But then the rest of the scene is good. I think it's just maybe a funky lighting shot or something. And I don't know.
It's the luminous stuff that's around him makes it look weird, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's what it must be. It must be. But I mean, anyway, so it just kind of threw me just for that 1 second. But overall, yeah, I think that, Yoda's message is, this was, look, and here's the opposing side of that and the yin and the yang. They both kind of admit that the Jedi fail and they fail a lot, but, Luke says it to Rey and then Yoda's bringing up failure, but Luke was talking about it in this very, very negative way to Rey, they failed and look at all this bad stuff that happened. And he's laying blame, really, that's his tone of voice, in my opinion. And Yoda's more we all fail. That's just how you learn. And it's a much more positive outlook on the same idea, but Luke was negative about it, and Yoda's looking at it from a positive. So the light and the dark, just a mood of thinking. I'm not saying Luke was dark, but it was just he was negative, and Yoda was very much more positive, kind of about the same exact. It was the same subject and, about the Jedi. So it's just, I don't know. I found a lot of those little moments where it wasn't just, because there's a yin and yang basically symbol in the middle of the floor there. it was other things all through the movie. It wasn't, not just them saying balance. It was actually just going back and just subtle things like that. Like it was like, okay, this is like a message of balance here to me. I don't know if it's intentional, but the balance thing has been shoved down my throat so much I'm just seeing it everywhere now.
Well, here's the thing with Yoda is like, and Luke asks him, so it is time for the Jedi Order to end. And Yoda's like, yeah. And he's cool with it. But then Luke is like, I won't be the last Jedi. The Jedi will rise. Obviously, I think Yoda was doing that to get Luke in the mindset that he needed to be in. I guess that's the lesson. I guess that's where my little conflict is with that whole scene there. Like Yoda was like, yeah, cool. And it kind of goes back to the Clone Wars Yoda arc where he's like, at the end of that, he's like, yeah, we'll be cool. There's something else will happen someday later on in the future, and I'm cool with whatever happens. And that's kind of is a thread that goes all the way through to where we see him at the end there, where he's like, yeah, it is time to end at least the old ways. And I actually loved his page turner joke. I find that funny as heck. I don't know why, but I loved it. I didn't have an issue with it. I thought his humor was great. I'm glad they went back to the Empire Strikes Back kind of Yoda, where he's goofing around and not between Rebels and A New Hope and before we get to in the prequel stuff where he's a little bit more serious. I like the goofy side of him where he's teaching Luke more with his silliness. That, you know what I mean? Like he's not being Mr. Serious and rigid, and that's part of the failure. Then that was great because you see him throughout everything we see in the prequels with Yoda and with his Yoda arc and the Clone Wars. He realizes I lost. I failed, and that was my greatest lesson, and this is why I can let go of the Jedi. This is why I can let go of that. He did say to Luke, though, we can't lose Rey. We lost Kylo or Ben, but we can't lose Rey, which kind of makes me think of a Skywalker, but, in that whole argument. And it's funny because it just mirrors what him and Kenobi were talking about at that time in Empire Strikes Back. Like, it made me think of that scene where he's like, no, there is another, that whole thing and stuff like that. But any more thoughts, sir, on Yoda or anywhere in the movie? Where do you want to go next?
We didn't mention her at all, so I think we should mention Haldo.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I thought it was pretty good, and I really liked the dynamic with Poe. Like, I had heard something, I'd heard some things weeks ago, all this lead up to everything with all the press, and, I'd read something about their interactions, and I was like, it's kind of how Poe, when he first sees her, he says, not what I was expecting. And that's kind of my reaction to their dynamic with each other. It was like, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be interested in that at all. And actually, I actually quite like that. And obviously.
Well, you know what I'll take from that is like when he puts her and, he says stun them and all that, and he walks away and she sees the moment and does exactly what he would do, which is why I think she says, I like him because, he's aggressive when he has to be. And she is too. She's just smarter about it because she's older and wiser. And obviously she did what she had to do.
Look, I might be going overboard here, but that's another, isn't that what, I guess like with old, like you said, older, wiser, but, I guess the wisdom is is the balance here because she is like Poe, but she's got this other side. It's all about finding the middle ground. You got to do stuff when you got to do it, but you got to blow something up, to use Poe's line. You got to blow something up sometimes, but you can't do it, all the time. You got to know when not to blow something up. So it's that kind of balance. And you see how, when people are balanced, like when they have to be stern and rigid, like her character is with him, or she's like, has a very touching moment with Leia later on. So her character, you say wise, but I say, wise also, but balance. So, I don't know, just another crazy example I'm thinking of.
No, I definitely agree with you. And I found her character to be a surprise, actually. I know some people said, she was only in it for like 5 minutes, really, in a sense. And she was
she had a nice little stretch there. Yeah. I thought it was, I thought it was way more than a cameo, but.
Oh, yeah. I definitely agree. And she had a for that small amount of time, a good arc, like a character arc. And I thought that was great. I loved her character. I thought she was better than I actually thought she would be.
Yeah. Based on, I would say pound for pound, her story arc isn't very long, and so it's very truncated, but pound for pound, it's one of the better ones in the movie, actually. Just as far as a single person's character arc, I think, just because of the short amount of time that he gave it, and actually it really comes off very well, though.
Yeah, and the other thing with Poe and even Kylo, Poe learns the lesson of being patient. not rushing in. Like at the end with Luke, he's like, no, Luke is doing this for a reason.
Yeah.
He realizes,
and her
Holdo's
arc obviously is
yeah.
helping Poe's arc. Like this is the
Correct.
progressed Poe's. Her character is really a supporting character, supporting Poe's character and making it more relevant going forward. So yeah,
correct. And you could even say that about Luke with Kylo, because I think Kylo learns the lesson after Luke defeats him, and he's got that look when he sticks his saber in him, and he realizes, oh man, what did I do? And then he realizes I screwed up because I let my emotions get the better of me. And I wasn't, which makes me think Kylo will be more dangerous even going further. Like he'll be more of a patient homicidal monster. And one of the other things I'll mention about Kylo, and I don't mean to jump back to Kylo because, Holdo's got some more interesting things I'd like to get to as well, is that he admits he's a monster now. Like he admits, he's like, yeah, this is it. I am that. And Rey is kind of like still wrestling with the idea that he's a monster and all this other stuff. I thought that was interesting.
I mean, to me, it was very, her tone and like kind of the plea. I mean, it was very, kind of that Anakin Padme kind of moment on Mustafar where she's like, don't do this. It's very sincere. It's very sincere, I guess I'll say. And maybe, because it's just, I don't know. Again, the acting is, pretty stellar in all these movies they've done lately, in my opinion. So, I mean, so there is that aspect to it, but I don't know. It just felt really like the sincere moment. Like, don't do that. Like, come on, this again. And it's just, but yeah, so he died. But anyway, we all know what happens, but,
yeah. Well, the other thing I think was actually, I don't know if you noticed this funny moment, because Adam's acting is it's physical in a way. Obviously it's physical. And I don't mean with the shirt off and everything like that. And, I just think like when his subtle movements, like when he's fighting, it adds more drama to it, like the way he moves. And like when Rey initially, they have their force bond moment and he runs it out in the hallway and he slips a little bit, it made me think of a John Hughes film. You know what I mean? Like The Breakfast Club, when they're running in the hallway.
Yeah, he slides. Yeah. I mean, he literally, he doesn't trip. He like slides. He comes to a stop. Like, I just think that's kind of, I think that's a little bit of Adam Driver adding that into the character. I'm not sitting here calling it improv. I'm sure that they said, hey, run out here. I'm just saying, maybe he physically improv that. Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. Like he is a good physical actor as far as his, moving his, the way he kind of moves his body and gestures and his mannerisms and things like that. He's definitely got a lot of, he like has an eye twitch in this movie. Like, I like that. Yeah. You notice his eye twitching all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Like today I saw the eye twitch and like, he's a very good, I guess, what is it? A physical actor, I guess you could say. And like, even when he was fighting the Praetorian Guards and he was doing his movements, like he looked very imposing, like bigger than I thought he was. Like he looked just big, and like the way he lumbered around, it's like, all right, he's a big guy, but he can move that body and do these little subtle things that you pick up on, and like it makes him more real, I guess you could say. Like he's not that typical bad guy where he's just like, like Vader was like, boom, he didn't have he
looked like, as far as a size standpoint, he looks the part of Vader, basically, like kind of a
David
big,
Prowse
imposing. Like he's not, but like you say, he's still got the agility because he's not a torn up robot, but he's got, but he's a big, tall guy, and he's, wearing black, and he's swinging this red lightsaber. And I think, in his acting and the way he just kind of, when he's like holding it down, it just feels like it's a very old style of fighting. Like at the very end, like he like throws one guy like he's throwing him into a turnbuckle.
Exactly.
Like, and so it just felt like it felt like this was like a Game of Thrones kind of fight more than Star Wars in a way. Like it felt very, at least on his side, it felt very like raw and like I'm out in the middle of a battlefield, like fighting with swords and stuff. So, I mean, because their weapons could deflect the lightsaber. So, I mean, basically, it is just fighting with swords, basically, at the end of the day. I mean, so I don't know. It just felt like it had like that kind of Battle of the Bastards kind of feel to it. Like as far as him fighting, like I could see, Kit Harington would have to grow a foot, but like I could just see him kind of doing those same kind of moves and stuff is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it definitely. And like when you compare that to Gwendolyn Christie when she was Phasma and Finn were fighting, it was very rigid. Like she was just robotic, Chrome Dome, Terminator style kind of thing. It was an interesting fight, I'll say that, but it was just kind of very rigid. And, and I just thought of her with Game of Thrones with all that armor on. I don't know how she managed to even move the way she could move. Stuff like that.
I was actually thinking during the movie that when that fight's going on, I'm like, God, Brianna Tarth would kick Phasma's butt like so easily.
Well, it was very interesting because I think she was just in that question. And Albert and I will answer it tomorrow because we had a bunch of people in Discord asking that question about her surviving and stuff like that. That'll be very interesting and stuff like that. But, the other thing, speaking of fighting styles, is I noticed like with Luke with the beard that was dyed and the hair, the younger look at him, he looked like Chuck Norris to me, like Chuck Norris Jedi. Like that's kind of what I took from that. And I thought of you, like, you know what? He's going a little Han Solo with his stance and the whole gunslinger kind of thing. I thought that was pretty cool when I think about it. And the way he fought. This is the thing with that scene. I thought it was a little underdone. In my mind, like I wish there were more dialogue of him and Ben going back and forth, but I guess that wasn't a bad thing because, like I said to you, going forward, like I guess on the hype show, I said we don't have that backstory with Luke and Ben and how that went. Granted, we got it today, and that was interesting that you got one side of the story and the other side of the story where with Kylo's side, like Luke is looking menacing and evil when he lights the lightsaber, and then Luke is looking more solemn.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
Correct, and like Luke is looking like that is the more truer version of things, I think. Whereas Kylo's got it in his head where Luke was just out to kill him and everything. And Luke obviously said, "Ben, no, I didn't really like. It was obviously too late. Late. It was interesting that Luke said, I think he thought I was dead." And, Kylo didn't even go look for a body or anything. He just kind of slaughtered everybody, took a few people with him, like 5 people. I guess that's what Luke said. I'm not sure.
Said he said a handful. So
yeah.
However you want to interpret that, I don't know if does that mean 5? I don't know that that necessarily has to mean 5, but I mean, you got 5 fingers, right? So I don't know.
That's what I'm going with.
It's not a handful. I don't know what is.
So does that mean the Knights of Ren are like his buddies and maybe they just weren't in this movie and we'll see them the next round? Because you're thinking the Praetorian Gods are those people, you know what I mean? Like Luke had 12 disciples, which is interesting, as you said last night. So you got to imagine 5 of those students were slaughtered and the other 5 or 7 or whatever you want to say kind of went off. Well, that's what I was,
well, I mentioned this last night. I said, I don't know if he meant he only had 12 students at that point. He could have had more.
Yeah.
When the temple burned, that's just what he started out with. But I'm guessing. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's the way I'm kind of thinking it. So I don't.
Because when I'm watching that, when I'm watching that and I'm watching the vision, it's interesting that Ben's in like a little hut on the outskirts of the big temple, because this is where I think there's more Jedi there because it's a big temple. It's not like small like Ash-2 there or Ak-2, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like it looks very similar to the first Jedi temple, which makes me think Luke found that island long ago. He just didn't tell anyone, so he had a backup plan if he needed to go into exile and stuff like that. So that's pretty interesting because the buildings look almost the same to me, like the dome cone shape type of stuff. So I just think I think there was more at the time because we don't know when Luke really starts this temple. I imagine it's when Ben was around 12, and which, again, going back to Bloodlines, I think that timeline is skewed because it's the point of view from Leia's point of view, and I think Ben turned even earlier than that. They just didn't know about it, and I think Luke tells her later on, like, yeah, Ben went to the dark side with Snoke, and the temple is gone, and all this other stuff, and he kind of blames himself and goes off into exile, and that whole thing. I don't know, did you take away from that? Did you... With the bloodline thing, are you reconciling it anyway? I know you mentioned it a little bit, but have you thought about it anymore? Probably not.
I hadn't thought of that. I haven't really. I don't have any like real solid theories right now. Like I'm not even wanting to get into it because I feel like I don't know. I don't want to sound negative, but like I just feel like I'd be like wasting my time at this point because like I don't know what to expect. So maybe that's a good thing. That's true. Maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. So. Like at this moment, I'm trying to process things and trying to dissect the movie, but I don't know that I don't want to like make too many predictions. It's just, but I kind of mentioned the stuff that is making me think though. So eventually those will go into my harebrained ideas at some point. So, but no, I don't have any ideas on that, thus yet.
No. Well, so anything else you got going on? Anything else that stood out with you yet?
I've heard a lot of people, like, they use the word beautiful when they talk about, like, the visuals of this movie, like, in some part, like, I've heard, and George Lucas used that word. I think Joe in our Discord, I think he did, and I think Albert did jokingly.
Well, so you can never know with Albert. He's, Mr. Sarcasm. No, but
one thing I did think was like a beautiful shot was, there on Crate when Luke has the lightsaber out, Kylo's got it out, and it's like the showdown. Like they have the
gunslinger moment.
It's almost like wouldn't a panorama poster of that, like,
I do want that. Yeah.
Like, would be really cool. Like, it just, like, it was the lighting of it. It was everything about that. You have the white underneath, and then there's some red floating in the air, but it's really just like the backdrop of really mostly the planet and the mountain that you see. It's not, you don't see the First Order things. It's just him. It's just Kylo and Luke, and I don't know, like, it was just a great, like, whatever it was, 1 second shot, but it just sticks in my mind. And I thought that was the best, I don't know, like, it was just, I guess just because of the context of it, but like, that might have just been, if I'm just going to pick like a picture out, that might have been my favorite picture from the movie.
I don't know. I kind of liked him coming out of the door with the fire around him too. I thought that was pretty cool.
Last night, like, when I watched it the first time and he started walking towards the door, the camera still from the inside.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. I was like, what is he going to do? So I couldn't believe, I thought he was going to start jumping around like Yoda and slicing the walkers down or something.
Well,
he was going to have like a Vader Rogue One moment or so. I thought that's where they were going with it. I was like, oh my lordy.
I wish he'd taken the shuttle and like slammed it down like he did it himself. Like he'd bring it down, or one of the walkers when they were firing at him, like he would do that or something like that. I thought that would have been nice, but it was very subtle. I guess you could say that whole confrontation, and that's what it was supposed to be. And I did think it's funny. It was a serious moment. Kylo says what he says to him, and then, Luke says, I'm sorry, Ben. And, he goes, he says his thing. It was an interesting tension breaker, I guess you could say. And obviously it was stalling time and stuff like that. Now, I'm really curious how Luke is going to haunt him. Like, I think that's an interesting dynamic going forward that I think JJ could explore where, Ben didn't do that. Kenobi didn't do that. Obviously, he didn't interfere. Where Luke is kind of like, yeah, I'm going to interfere and I'm going to get in your head. Han's in his head. It's going to be interesting how Luke is going to do this. Like, is he going to manipulate things where Kylo is sitting in his throne room now, and all of a sudden he's got an image of Luke, and then his father appears, and all these things are going on, and is it going to warp his mind? It's almost like when you think of Vader, and he's in his hyperbaric chamber there where he's meditating and thinking of Padme, the Jedi, and all these things, Obi-Wan, and there's that artwork that's done where he's sitting there reflecting on things, and you see Obi-Wan and Padme where he's actually got the sorrow, and then he builds up that anger and stuff. Are we going to get anything like that? Would be pretty cool to see going forward in 9. I don't know if they'll do that. I don't know if JJ will want to explore that, but it would be an interesting concept. I think I want to say to our audience and our listeners and our Patreon people and our Discord people and all that is give this a chance. You got to dissect it. You got to kind of look at it a handful of times. We're still trying to wrestle with things ourselves. It got better the second time. As I said, it was a 6 last night. It's a 6.3 now. Not that I'm really ranking it, but I'm kind of giving you a gauge of where my mindset is now. There's still a lot of gaps that I need to investigate, and that's what we're going to do in the next month or so. When we break down the characters, we break down what we've learned with the Force, all these crazy things that are coming up. We're going to break it down because that's what we do, and we're looking forward to doing it. It's going to be very interesting to say the least, isn't it, Joe? I would think so. But I think that's going to do it for this episode, Joe. Tell them where to like us, find us, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook.com/The Cantina Cast, at The Cantina Cast on Twitter and Instagram, and you can join us on Discord. Just Google search that, check the show notes. Patreon stuff, if you want to check that out, you find that in the show notes too, or just search for that. And I guess that's it. We'll have to decide what character we're doing first. I don't know. We might have to flip on it, or maybe nothing in that sentence I said was right at all.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. It's been fun, and we'll see you guys later. You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.